A few years ago, my girlfriend at the time and I set out to complete a lengthy section hike of the Appalachian Trail through the rugged borderlands of Tennessee during the early days of June. Before detailing what transpired, I feel it is crucial to establish my background. I am an elite, highly experienced backpacker. I have successfully navigated wilderness sections across 6 different states. I am intimately familiar with the backcountry, and I am absolutely not the type of hypersensitive hiker who panics at the sound of a nocturnal animal or a shifting branch outside a tent. I emphasize this because the events of that night might easily be dismissed as a case of standard nighttime paranoia. I can assure you with absolute certainty that it was something far more deliberate and terrifying. We had chosen to pitch our tent at a remote, primitive campsite located roughly 2 miles off the main Appalachian Trail corridor, accessible only via a faint, blue blaze spur trail. We were completely alone at the site, which was exactly what we wanted: unbroken silence and isolation from the crowded shelter sites. We executed our camp routine flawlessly. The tent was securely staked, our food rations were hung high from a bare branch 100 yards away, and our campfire had been properly extinguished down to cold ash. By roughly 10 o'clock, we had crawled into the tent. My girlfriend fell asleep almost instantly, a byproduct of a grueling 15-mile hike with a heavy pack. I, however, lay awake, entering that typical, hyper-aware state where your mind slowly settles before dropping off to sleep. The forest was completely dead and silent. Then, I heard the walking. I need you to understand something very clearly. This was not the erratic, multi-pedal scurrying of a nocturnal animal. I have spent hundreds of nights in the deep woods. I know precisely what a white-tailed deer sounds like when it steps through dry brush. I know the distinct, heavy, low-slung shuffling of a black bear. I know the light, sporadic treading of a raccoon or an opossum. This sound was definitively, undeniably bipedal. It was the heavy, rhythmic cadence of 2 distinct feet alternating weight, moving with absolute balance and intent through the dry leaf litter. Worse, it wasn't walking through our campsite. It was walking around it. It moved with a terrifying, calculated precision along the absolute perimeter of the cleared campsite zone. It was circling us, navigating the boundary line where the cleared dirt of our camp met the dark, impenetrable wall of the dense forest. I will not attempt to rewrite history to make myself look brave. I was utterly paralyzed with fear. My heart was hammering violently against my ribs, but my analytical mind remained clear. I weighed my desperate options. I had a heavy tactical knife and a fresh canister of bear spray within arm's reach. I had a high lumens headlamp. However, waking my girlfriend seemed entirely counterproductive. Doing so would merely trap 2 terrified people inside a fragile nylon dome instead of one. So, I lay perfectly still in the dark, straining my ears, and I listened. The entity walked the entire perimeter of our campsite 3 full, agonizing times. I counted every single bipedal step as it completed each circuit. And then, it stopped. The manner in which it stopped was perhaps the most unnatural aspect of the entire night. When a living animal or a human being halts their movement in the wilderness, they do not truly become silent. You can still detect their physical presence. You hear the deep, rhythmic expansion of their lungs. You hear the subtle shifting of weight on soil. You catch the faint snap of a twig or a dry leaf as they adjust their stance. When this thing stopped moving, it was as if a cosmic switch had been flipped. It resulted in a sudden, total vacuum of sound. 1 fraction of a second I could hear the heavy, bipedal crunch of dry leaves. The next fraction of a second, there was absolutely nothing. No sound of a departing step, no fading rustle of brush, no shift in posture. Just an immediate, terrifying absence of existence. I did not close my eyes for the remainder of the night. The moment the very first pale rays of dawn filtered through the trees, I silently unzipped the tent fly and stepped out into the damp morning air. I immediately went to investigate the perimeter of our site, and I found exactly what I feared I would find. All along the outer edge of the clearing, precisely at the tree line, the natural carpet of dead leaves and forest duff had been heavily disturbed in a continuous, uninterrupted line. It looked as though something had deliberately scuffed and ground the leaf litter down to the dark dirt beneath while walking a perfect, unbroken circle around our tent. It wasn't a collection of clean, identifiable footprints. The thick layer of leaves made that impossible, but it was an unmistakable, uniform track of physical disturbance that completely encircled our camp. When my girlfriend awoke, I pointed out the strange ring of disturbed leaves. She shrugged it off, suggesting a deer had likely wandered through the area while we slept. I simply nodded, told her she was probably right, and we quickly packed our gear and hit the trail. I have shared this experience on a few specialized backpacking forums over the years, and the responses are always the same. Internet armchair experts telling me it was just a curious deer or a foraging bear. But those people were not in that tent. A deer does not walk a mathematically precise circle around a human camp 3 times and then vanish into thin air like a ghost. There is a final detail to this account. Over the subsequent years, an obsessive curiosity drew me back to that specific remote campsite twice. On both occasions, I deliberately visited during midday, wanting to analyze the topography to see if there was any logical, geographical explanation for what I had experienced. During my second return visit, I decided to climb a steep, rocky slope situated directly above the clearing to get an elevated, bird's-eye view of the campsite layout. I had developed a theory that the unnatural precision of the perimeter walk might reveal its true nature if viewed from a higher vantage point. Standing on that high ridge looking down, my blood ran cold. From above, I could see that the cleared clearing of the campsite was almost a perfect, unnatural circle. While natural clearings do occur in the backcountry, they are rarely perfectly round. From this elevated perspective, the ancient line of scuffed leaves from years prior was obviously long gone, but the physical boundary was glaringly clear. Whatever had circled us that night had stayed entirely within the heavy shadows of the tree line. It had navigated the exact mathematical boundary between our temporary human habitat and the primordial forest. It had not crossed into our clearing by even a fraction of an inch, nor had it drifted deeper into the woods. It kept itself meticulously on the outside, maintaining the boundary, watching us from the threshold.